I just got back to my room from watching Conan O'Brien at the Oxford Union today, and I wasn't planning on making a video about this, but it was such a fantastic experience that I really wanted to register, to record this, to save this in some way. So here we are. And I think I really want to talk about the things that I learned from watching him speak. And it wasn't, I was sitting in the back of the chamber. I wanted to ask a question, but I wasn't one of they only had enough time for 3 people to ask questions, and I wasn't one of the people chosen. So I didn't interact with him one-on-one or anything like that. But it was still such a fantastic experience. And I really want to talk about it, I really want to talk about that. And it's one of the things that it's great about living in Oxford, I think, is having this kind of experience, being in these rooms with these people, with people who are this successful, who have such a name, who are, very important in their own fields, who are international names, it's a special thing, and it's not the first time I've been in a room like this. I mean, just last week, I was at the Union, and one of my first videos on this channel is a tour of the Oxford Union Library, because that's one of my favorite places to study and to write. But just last week I was there to watch a talk by Sérgio Moro, who is this very important figure in Brazilian politics. He was the judge who was responsible for Operation Car Wash, which is this huge anti-corruption operation that took place in Brazil a few years ago. And then this week I was there to listen to Conan O'Brien speak. And so let's talk about that, because I think it's really worth talking about it. And the Union always posts the talks they have on their YouTube channel. It always takes a while, so it's not going to happen right away. But when they post this, I think everybody should watch it. Should spend an hour or so listening to what he has to say. So the first thing that struck me was his vulnerability. In the beginning of the interview, he talked about confidence, and more specifically about lack of confidence, about how in the beginning of his career he didn't have any confidence at all in himself, and he talked about being in the writer's room in The Simpsons and being absolutely scared. And I thought I had such deep respect for him for admitting that, because I try to go to as many of these events as I can while I'm here. I'm trying to expose myself to as many influences, as many voices as I can. I'm always hoping that something that someone will say will, spark something in my brain, give me that seed of inspiration to create something new, a story or something. I don't know. But I want to be open, and I want to take in all of these influences, and I want some magic to happen in my brain, mixing all of those things up. One of the types of events that I really like going to, obviously, is talks by writers, so authors speaking. And I'm in the speculative fiction group. I used to be the speaker of the group, now I'm the emeritus speaker of the group, which basically my function was to liaise with authors and invite them to come to Oxford. But the thing is, I went to a couple of events earlier this year, I think, with authors that were coming to speak to the speculative fiction group. And this should be my jam, right? Because it's not just writers, it's writers who are writing speculative fiction, which is the genre that I hope to write in, and something that I really, really like. And the talks were fine, and they had their moments, and I enjoyed them to a degree. But one thing that started to annoy me a bit was that we had a couple of speakers in a row who were very resistant to speaking about the struggles of writing, especially in the beginning. And this is something that is on my mind all the time, because I struggle with it a lot, with thinking that maybe I won't make it, and how do I push through the fear of not making, and the worry and the anxiety about the future. How do I push through just enough to keep doing the thing and keep writing and keep building up my work? So naturally, I'm very interested in hearing about the experience from people who have made it, to hear how they pushed through this, how they dealt with this, if they were ever scared. And I was hearing from writers who at some point were, doing a PhD exactly like I am doing now. But when I asked them about these things, they acted as if it was no big deal, as if they were never worried about it at all, as if they were never concerned, as if it was whatever was going to happen, and that was fine. And I mean, it is possible that they were being perfectly honest, and I just can't relate to that experience. It is also possible that they were resistant to speaking about the struggle part, which I think is a pity. So I have the deepest respect for Conan when he was being very open about not being confident. And in fact, that is the question I wanted to ask him. If I had had a chance, I would have told him that I admire him for admitting that, because I do, I really do. And I wanted to ask him because I'm sure that although he wasn't confident in the beginning and for a long time, I'm sure that it was necessary in his line of work to appear confident. And I wanted him to share his experience with that. How did he do that? To share his experiences, tips and tricks to teach us how to appear confident, even if you are not, because I get a sense that that is a necessary part sometimes of success. But I didn't get a chance to ask him. So, if like he visits your school or something, and you get a chance to ask that, please let me know what he says, because I'm really, really, really interested in that. He also said a lot of things having to do with authenticity, and that I thought was very nice. He described the sensation of having something produce a result, something that felt uniquely him, authentically him. And it was delightful to hear about that experience. And I felt in some ways that is similar to what I felt when my video on the genetics of hair color in Game of Thrones was the first video on my channel that did well above the average in comparison with my other videos. But then my genetic engineering in Star Trek video really did really, really well. And that felt great, And it's exactly that feeling. He found the right words. It's the feeling that something that is authentically me, fully me, uniquely me, producing a result in some way. And it's a wonderful feeling. And a lot of things he said in this sense made me feel like I am on the right track, on the right path. And that is not a feeling that I get very often. And it was great, It felt very, well, empowering and stimulating, and it was like an incentive. It's very difficult to describe, but it felt great. It was wonderful to be in that room, listening to those things at this moment in my life, if that makes any sense. He had a lot to say about internet and social media, which I found very interesting. Some of the questions that people asked him had to do with what does he think the future of late shows is, for instance, or how do you break into comedy nowadays? And all of these different questions, he somehow ended up talking about social media in some way, the internet in general, and cell phones and social media finally. And the trend was that he was saying that when the tools that were available when he broke in, the avenues that he took are probably not the same avenues one can take today. But it is also true that there are many more tools, many more resources that were not available back then, that are very available now. And then he was specifically talking about the fact that everybody has a phone and everybody can pick up their phone and make a video and put out something funny out into the world. And he was talking specifically about comedy, but I think it was very applicable and very easy to extrapolate that into almost any sort of activity, and especially activities in the creative sphere, like what I am doing, for instance. And I think he's right, It took me a long time to decide to finally start this channel for a number of reasons. But part of the reason why I wanted to do it, and part of the reason why I think this is important, is because this is the medium of my generation, and it would be a pity not to use these resources to add my voice to the conversation in topics that are close and dear to my heart, if that makes sense. So it was nice listening to him talking about that and incentivizing people to pursue this, to not squander resources that were not available a few decades ago, that people a few decades ago who were dying to make it, who were dying to make something big, to have a voice, to add their voice to the conversation, they would have loved to have that, and they didn't, but we do. And there is a responsibility in us to do the best we can with this. I think so, at least. And I try to live up to that responsibility. And he talked about his experience on like how he has a podcast now, and he feels that his connection with people is much more, much closer, much more intimate than the connection he had when he was at the peak of his work doing late night television. There was much that he talked about the way late night television worked, you know, how he attributes part of the success of having a show that was airing at 12:30 a.m. to the fact that there was nothing else on at 12:30 a.m. and he used to run into people on the streets and they would tell him, I watch your show, and then they would tell him why they were awake at that hour. And this is just not a thing anymore. Because if we are awake at 12:30 a.m., as I often am, as I'm sure a lot of people watching this are, we can do anything at all. We can watch any movie, any TV show, read any book. There's no limit. So, and he talked about that. He talks about how he sees the format, the late night format, disappearing, but the voices that are part of that scenario is staying in other ways, like he stayed now doing a podcast, which in his view gives him a much more intimate connection with people than he had before. And that was beautiful to watch. I think there's something very beautiful in watching someone who is a master of their craft talking, just going on and on about their expertise in this craft. It's kind of like, you know, one of the things that I think about when I think about this is that if you go to Picasso's works of art, he didn't start doing cubism. If you look at his painting, his drawings when he was young, he was doing this elaborate anatomical drawing, so detailed, so realistic, so he had to master that before he created the avant-garde thing that he is admired for today. But that was important, you know, and you can find quotes, I think, of him saying that he had to learn to draw like a master so he could draw like a child or something like that. And I think that is a very important lesson, you know, that every successful person, they are experts in their field, and it's beautiful to watch. It's the same thing with Brandon Sanderson, right? So there's a video of his from a while back where he's talking about the different traditions of fantasy, and he talks about secondary world, which are like children's fantasy books like Alice in Wonderland and Harry Potter and things like that. Epic fantasy that started with Tolkien. Then there's a hero fantasy, which is things like Conan the Barbarian and John Carter of Mars. But the thing is, he knows his genre, the genre he writes in so well. It's so far beyond just sitting down and coming up with his own word. He's read these books, he understands how they work, he understands the chronology of how they appeared in our history. And it's beautiful to watch, you know. It is something to aspire to, something I aspire to, and I know that in my field I'm on a journey. I'm so far away from that kind of ease and that kind of expertise. And I just think it's marvelous to watch that in action. I also really appreciate what he said. He was a very encouraging person to hear, because he doesn't believe in raw talent. He believes in effort. He literally said, everybody in this room, anybody here could pick up their phone and do something and put some funny videos online and make it big. And I think it's beautiful that he believes that, you know. It's certainly something that I want to believe in as well. And he puts a great amount of emphasis on the importance of having a body of work. He said that he runs into people sometimes that talk to him about how they want to be like him, they want to be comedians, and he asks them, what are you working on? And they have nothing to show for it. Their answer is nothing yet. And he says that this is the wrong way. You should be doing the work. If you want to write, you should write. If you want to write for TV, you should have episodes and movie scripts in your drawer, even if nobody is reading them, because that's your body of work. That's how you get better. And he put a great deal of credit to, he said that his success is due to back when he was in his 20s grinding. He was doing something that perhaps wasn't as appreciated as it should be. There was no success, there was no bags of money coming in, but he stuck to it, you know. He just stuck to it. He believed it and he built his body of work. He said something, let me see if I can find it here, because I'm sure I wrote it down. He said, yeah, we go down with this vision. That's the expression that he used. And it kind of reminded me of something that Stannis says in Game of Thrones when he says, we march to victory or we march to defeat, but we go forward, only forward. And those are words to live by, it seems to me. And it made me so happy because, you know, I believe that, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to do that with this channel. I'm trying to do that. So I've been meaning to talk about this in the channel for a long time now. But this is the first draft of my first novel. I finally finished. I finished it on the 30th of September. And this, I made only one video about this. So the video I made about the Oxford Union Library was actually a writing video where I was talking about this novel, my End of the World novel, which at the time I was maybe at 50,000 words. So the first draft is complete, it's a little more than 91,000 words, and now I'm trying to learn how to edit and how to work this out, how to turn this draft into a finished book. And I'm very far away from it. But at one point I was very far away from having a first draft. And I don't know, listening to him talking about how the important thing is to build a body of work just made me happy, you know, and made me feel like I am on the right track with the things that I'm doing and all the different things that I'm trying and all the different avenues that I'm exploring. It was so great being in that room today. And not to mention that he's, you know, I have never watched comedy live. In part because I watched this movie when I was a kid that had a stand-up comedian being really mean and I got a little scared of it. But there's something so special about, because the chamber was packed, you know, people started queuing to watch his talk 2 hours before the talk was supposed to happen, and the chamber was absolutely packed, but his presence filled the entire room. It was so funny, and it was just such a pleasure to hear him speak, and I feel so rich, you know, so fortunate to have had this opportunity. And I wanted to talk about it. It made me think, because this week in particular has been very rough, very busy. And it's been the kind of week where I'm frequently, you know, staring into emptiness and asking the universe, what is it that life has in store for me? But somehow listening to him speak about the things that he thinks are important and the things that he attributes success to. And also, you know, I'm trying to find my way. I'm trying to build my path. And being around someone who has found theirs, you know, who made it, who knows who they are, who has built their path, it's always good to be able to learn from people like these. I think life is very difficult and we are not meant to learn everything alone. You know, we need the people who came before. We need to learn what we can from them. And there's that feeling in, you know, in Data's Day. I think it's the 10th episode of the 4th season of The Next Generation, when Data is writing a letter about his day to Bruce Maddox. It's kind of a follow-up to A Measure of a Man. And at the very end, Data says something that goes more or less like this. It says that if being human is more than being made of flesh and blood, if it's rather a way of thinking and being and feeling, then I am confident that one day I will find my humanity. And that's kind of how today felt, you know, made me feel confident that I will find my path, you know, find my place in the world, or build a place for myself in the world. And isn't that a wonderful feeling? You know, I feel very privileged to have had the opportunity. I don't want this to be horribly long. I'm going to try to edit this very quickly and post it right away. I'm already, I just finished the script for my next video, which is going to be, I'm going to talk about experimentation on human subjects. So basically episodes where we see aliens experimenting on humans, what kind of stories are told, what kind of parallels exist between that and human experimentation in real life. And I was working on this as a prelude to my video about cloning in Star Trek. So I'm working on that. I want to make a video about the manuscript, right? About the things I learned from finishing this manuscript, because I've been working on this on and off for about 5 years. So I learned a couple of things along the way, the things that allowed me to finish it. I also wanted to make a video about these notebooks that I've been using. So this is my pocket notebook, which is one of 4 notebooks that I keep around all the time. It's more about so the importance of physical things, of not being completely digital in the world, which I don't know if it's a controversial topic or not. So I've always enjoyed writing with ink and paper, but I had gotten away from it after I moved here for a number of reasons, and now I'm getting back to it. I think it's worth talking about it, you know. And then the next 3 things are this video about alien experimentation in humans, my video about cloning in Star Trek, and a piece I've been working on for a while about the genetics of inbreeding among the Targaryens in Game of Thrones. which I think are all cool things to talk about, and I hope it will be good videos, and I hope I'll be able to put them out soon. I can't always put them out as fast as I want, but you know, I'm doing my best, and I'm glad to be building this body of work, I suppose. And now I'm rambling, and I've been rambling for a while, so I should probably finish this. I hope the video works out okay. I hope the audio is okay. I hope this comes out soon. This was a fantastic experience. I had a great time. I feel very privileged tonight. I should probably go to bed soon because I have to get a train to York early in the morning because I'm presenting my work at a meeting up there. Just a 5-minute presentation, like not a big deal at all, but I'm still happy I'm going. And yeah, this is what I have for today. Completely unexpected, but it is what it is. I can't wait to upload my next video. It's been a pleasure. Until we meet again, live long and prosper. If